Hey, third graders. So we're going to start our new unit on geometry, and we're going to go over triangles today. So our whole lesson today will be on triangles. If you haven't already made your little vocabulary book, that was the first step of this assignment. If you haven't, pause the video and go make a book or get a notebook or some pieces of paper or something. Make a book because you will need it in this lesson to be able to write your vocabulary words. So if you haven't already, go make your book. If you do have it, you should have your little vocabulary book and a pencil with you. All right, let's get started. So by the end of this lesson, you can understand the relationship between angles and triangles, and we're going to talk about those in this lesson, and by the end of this lesson, you'll be able to say you can do that. All right, so here are your vocabulary words: angle, ray, right angle, acute angle, and obtuse angle. And don't worry, I'm going to teach you what those are. All right, so we have different types of angles. So let's look first. First, we need to know what a ray is. A ray is a part of line that has one end point. So do you see how it has a little dot? That's where it ends or it starts. And then it continues forever in one direction. So do you notice how these have arrows at the end of it? When they have the arrow, that means it can go on forever and ever and ever. Now, you wouldn't draw the line going forever and ever and ever. So they just put an arrow on it to show that it would go on forever. Okay, so all of these, it can go in any direction. A ray can, and it starts somewhere, but then it goes on forever and ever and doesn't really have an end. Okay, if two rays come together to meet and form an endpoint, then that is called an angle. So all of these are different examples of angles. So I want you to really quick, parents might be looking at you goofy, but I want you to make some angles with your arms, okay? So these are some examples of angles. This one has two endpoints right here. These ones go on forever and ever in both directions, okay? Those are different kinds of angles, and there can be little angles and big angles, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Okay, so an angle that forms a square corner is called a right angle, okay? So if it forms a perfect square, so two lines come together to create a square, that's called a right angle. And to signify that we have a right angle, we draw a little box in it to show that it makes a perfect square in that angle, okay? Some angles, too, though, can be smaller than a right angle. So here's my right angle. Some can be smaller, like the lines are squeezed in together more. And some angles can be bigger, so they can go out farther than a right angle. Okay, so notice that this one is really big. It's opened up from a right angle. This one's squeezed together, and then a right angle would be like a perfect square, which is kind of hard to see in the camera, but okay, so those are some vocabulary words. So we're going to fill in your vocabulary book. Now, hopefully you haven't written in it already, but hopefully you've created it. Now, you can put two vocabulary words on one page. You can do one on one page. This is just an example of what I recommend you do for your vocabulary book. So you're going to put the vocabulary word that you're learning at the top, okay? Then we're going to write the definition right here, and then we're going to draw examples in the example box, okay? So let's go back and look at what a ray is. So hopefully you have your book and your pencil right next to you because you're going to write it down too. A ray is a part of a line that has an endpoint and continues forever in one direction, okay? So I'm going to write that right here. Oops, that's huge. A ray is a part of a line that has an endpoint. Okay, let's go back. That has an endpoint and continues forever in one direction. I don't know about you guys, but staying home for so long has kind of melted my brain. I feel like I can't remember what I'm doing. Has an endpoint and continues forever in one direction. So you're going to write that in your vocabulary book, okay, for what a ray is. Then the fun part is you get to draw what a ray is. So you can draw several examples. You can do like this. You can do a long one, a short one. You can have it pointing in whatever direction you want, but you're just going to draw examples of rays. Okay, so that's what you'll have in your example part for the word ray. Okay, so if you need to pause the video at any of these points, that's a really great idea. Pause it, copy what I've written in my box, and then push play when you're ready to go to the next vocabulary word. Okay, all right, let's do angle. So the word angle, two line segments or two rays that meet at an endpoint form an angle. Okay, so it also says two line segments. So friends, these are line segments when it starts and it ends in one point. I forgot to mention that, okay? So a ray goes on forever in one direction. A line segment, it just starts and stops, and you can see how long it is, exactly how long it is. I can't see how long this one is because it goes on forever in that direction, okay? But an angle is either two line segments come together or two rays come together, okay? So two line segments or two rays that meet at an endpoint. Oops, I spelled segments wrong. Endpoint form an angle, okay? All right. So we have our definition, and again, if you need to pause the video and do that, and then I want you to draw in your book some examples, okay, of an angle. So you can draw ones that are made out of line segments where they both end in dots. You could draw one that ends in rays where they go on forever and ever. You could draw a tiny little angle. You could do a big, giant, obtuse angle. Okay, we'll talk about that here in just a second. Just give yourself some examples so that you can remember what it is when you go to that. Okay, so I just want to make sure we have everything from that page. Good. Again, pause the video if you need to copy down the definitions. All right, then we learned about the word right angle. So a right angle is an angle that forms a square corner, okay? So I'm going to put, okay, an angle that forms a square corner. You guys ever feel like your brain is mush? Because that's how I feel today. Maybe I shouldn't be making these videos today. An angle that forms a square corner, okay? So a right angle is perfect square. So think of like the corner of your door or corner of your notebook. Those are right angles. It's a perfect square. Okay, so then you're going to go ahead and draw pictures. And remember to show, now I'm drawing with the mouse, so it's not going to be perfect. But to show that it's a right angle, we're going to put a little square there. So can you draw one like this? Oops. Can you draw one like this that's a right angle? No, because this doesn't form a square, okay? So they need to be angles that form a square. And my drawings aren't great, so we're going to go back and just look at their examples. Okay, so here it forms a perfect square. This is not a right angle. This is not a right angle because it doesn't form a square. This one is a right angle. Okay, let's keep going. All right, these angles are named with a letter in their corner. So they just put letters by each one of these angles so they could say, hey, look at angle X. So they just named them, okay? Which of the angles are right angles? So which one of these are right angles? There's only one. It's W, right? Because W has a square in the corner showing that it makes a perfect square. Everyone see that shape? It makes a square, okay? So that is the only right angle in all of these angles. Which of these angles are smaller than a right angle? So they're saying they took a right angle and they squeezed it together. They made it smaller. Which ones of these are smaller than a right angle? Okay, well, let's look. Is V? No. X? Yes. Do you see how it's squished together? They took the right angle and they squished it. Okay, so we'll say X is one. What about Y? Yes, Y is also an acute, or is smaller than a right angle. We're squeezing it together. Okay. And Z. Z, I would say no, that one looks bigger, okay? So then which of the angles are larger than a right angle? So we've already done this one, we've already done this one, and we've already done this one. So let's look at the ones that are bigger. We've got V, V is definitely bigger. And we have Z, Z is slightly bigger than a right angle, okay? So we'll put Z. And let me just make sure I didn't have, okay. So now we're gonna talk about the names of these kinds. So any angles that are smaller than a right angle, so we squish them together, it's smaller than a right angle, those are called acute angles. And the way I think about it is little things are usually cute, right? Like little puppies or little ducks or babies, right? They're cute. So a acute angle is smaller than a right angle. It's squished together, okay? Then angles that are larger than a right angle, so like V and Z, Those are called obtuse angles. And that word just kind of sounds like it's like an elephant or something big, obtuse, okay? So that's how I remember those. Obtuse is bigger than a right angle. Okay, so let's go and fill in our definitions. Okay, I'm gonna click my text box. Okay, so an obtuse angle is an angle that is bigger than a right angle. Also, just so you guys know, angle is spelled A-N-G-L-E, and angel, like our friend in 3A, is spelled A-N-G-E-L. Okay, so if you write it like this, you're talking about angel the person or an angel like someone with wings. So you need to spell it G-L-E is an angle like what we were talking about, okay? And then you need to draw some examples, okay? So an obtuse angle, I got to make sure it's bigger than a square. Okay, these are all examples of obtuse. Now remember, I'm not going to draw it like this. That's acute. It's squished together, right? The lines are squished together. So that is not an example. These are all examples of obtuse. Okay. Then I'm going to write a definition for acute. An angle that is smaller than a right angle. Okay. So then I can draw examples of an acute angle, or yeah, an acute angle. Make really skinny ones, right? Those are all smaller. That one's not very good. They're all smaller than a right angle, so the two lines come together, closer together. Okay, remember, pause the video if you need to write these definitions because you will need them in your vocabulary book. It'll help you a lot to write these down for future assignments and things like that, so I would recommend doing that. All right, here's our second activity. Describe triangles by their types of angles. So triangles can be described by the types of angles that they have. In these triangles, one angle is a right angle. So do you see how they put the square in it? That means it's a right angle. So we call these right triangles. Okay. There's also triangles where all three of the little angles, do you guys see the angles right here? All three of them are smaller than a right angle. So these are acute triangles. Do you see that? Okay. And then in these triangles, one angle is larger than a right angle. Okay, so all of these ones have obtuse. They're bigger than a right angle. Okay, so like this one angle is bigger, this one's bigger, this one's bigger, and this one's bigger. And you're probably thinking, Ms. Cook, why aren't all of the angles obtuse or bigger than a right angle? That's impossible to draw, okay? Even if right now, if you want to pause the video and try to make a triangle, so three sides, 1, 2, 3, that has all obtuse angles or angles that are bigger. You can't do it, okay? So one of them's obtuse, but then do you see how this one's acute? And this one's acute, this one's obtuse, but these two other ones are acute, because if you tried to draw more than one obtuse, right, then you'd never be able to connect these ones. So you can't draw a triangle with more than one obtuse angle. All right, let's go to the next part. So which triangle has one right angle? So if you look at these, K, L, and M, which one has a right angle? M, right? Okay, so I'm going to write M. Which triangle has three? So all three angles are smaller than a right angle. K, right? And then which triangle has one angle that's larger than a right angle? So it's more spread out. L, do you see how this one is larger than a right angle? And you might be thinking, Ms. Cook, how can you tell? They would put a square there if it was an actual right angle, but if you notice, it's a little bit bigger than a right angle, okay? So we'll put L. All right, hopefully that made sense. Make sure you comment on the post if it didn't, if you're still confused by what makes an obtuse angle and what makes an acute little angle, right? All right, here's your brain break. I got some jokes for you. Let me see if I can even remember the answers to these. Okay, what does a cloud wear under his raincoat? Thunderwear. Okay, why are teddy bears never hungry? Because they're always stuffed. Okay, and what event do spiders love to attend? Webbings. Okay, so it's like weddings, but webbings. All right, so pause the video, do some stretches and some jumping jacks, get the wiggles out, and then come back when you're ready to do the second part of the lesson. Okay. All right, So here is the second part. Describe triangles by the number of sides of equal length. So with triangles, okay, you all know what triangles look like. We can define them by their size of their angles, so looking at the side of the angle, but we can also describe them by how long the sides are. Okay, so that's what we're going to be looking at now. Before we were looking at the angles, the sides, and the inside, but now we're looking at how long the sides are to tell us what kind of triangle they are. In these triangles, so these orange ones right here, the three sides are all the same length. So if you were to take a ruler, let's say this one's 1 inch, this one's 1 inch, and this one's 1 inch. This is actually called an equilateral triangle. I'm not going to make you remember that, but if you think about it, equilateral, equal, right? They're all the same size. Okay, so how we mark that, this is just like a geometry thing you'll see in the future, is if something is the same length on a shape, you put a line through both of them to show that they're the same length. So all three of these are the same length, so you put a line to show they're all the same length. Okay, looking at this one, they're all the same length too, right? Do you notice how all of these are the exact same shape? Because when you make an equilateral triangle, you can't make like an obtuse angle or anything because it makes one side longer than the other for equilateral triangles. Okay, so all of these have acute angles, but they also have the same length sides. Okay. Now let's look at these one. In these triangles, two sides are the same length, but then one is either longer or shorter. So let's look at this one. Which two sides are the same length? This one and this one. Okay, so I'm going to put two lines to show these two are the same size length. What about this one? It's actually this one and this one. These two are the same. If you were to measure these out, this one and this one are the same length, and then this one's longer to connect them together. What about this one? Which two sides are the same length? This one and this one. Okay, and the last one, which two sides are the same length? This one and this one. Okay, then there's also triangles where none of the sides are the same length. Okay, so I can't draw any purple lines because none of them are the same. You see how this one's long, but then this one's even longer and this one's short. So none of these are the same size length. Same with this one. This one is long, and then this one looks like it might be the same length, but it has to be longer to connect to the short one. Okay, so there are triangles that they don't have any length the same size. All right, let's go to the next one. So, which triangle out of B, C, and D has three sides that are all the same length? So they all measure, if you were to measure them, would be the same length. C, okay? C has all the same length. So I put a line through all of those. Didn't mean to make that line so big. Okay, so I'm going to put C. Which triangle has two sides that are the same length? D. Okay, do you see how this side and this side are the same length? Okay, they're not all the same, just this one and this one, right? Because this one's way shorter. And then which triangle has no sides that are the same length? Well, it's the only one we have left, right? These ones are not the same length. If you were to get a ruler and actually measure those out, if B was to be the same length, then this one would have to come out at the same angle as this one to make them the same. But they're not. None of them are the same length. Okay, so we'll put B for number 9. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, make sure you're writing down your questions if it doesn't. All right, use triangles M, N, and O for 10 through 12. So we're going to finish the sentences for each one of these. Okay, so let's look at the first one. Triangle blank has one angle larger than a right angle. Okay, so which one of these has an obtuse or an angle that's larger, bigger than a right angle? Is it M, N, or O? It's O, right? Do you guys see this angle is bigger than a right angle? Okay, and then we'll finish the rest of the sentence. Triangle O has one angle larger than a right angle and has blank sides of equal length. So how many of their sides are the same length? What do you think? None of them are the same length, right? This one's way longer. This one would probably be our medium one, and this would be our shortest one. None of them are the same length, so we're actually going to put a 0. And look, our O and our 0 look the same. Okay, let's look at number 11. Triangle blank has one right angle. So we're done with this one. Which one has a right angle? M, right? You see the little square there? That shows us that it's a perfect square. It's a right angle. So we're going to put M, okay? And has blank sides of equal length. Well, let's look. What do you guys think? Are any of these sides the same length? I would say yes. I would say this one and this one are the same length. So it has 2 sides, okay? Then let's look at number 12. Triangle blank has 3 angles smaller than a right angle. Well, it's the only one we have left, right? This one's smaller than a right angle, this one's smaller, and this one's smaller. Okay? And it has blank sides of equal length. How many sides do you think are equal? I would say 2, right? This one and this one are the same length. Okay, so I'm going to write 2. All right, let's do another one, another couple, okay? Triangle blank has 3 angles smaller than a right angle and has blank sides of equal length. Okay, so which one of these has 3 angles that are smaller than a right angle? I see this one, but I actually also see this one, okay? So we'll wait on that one. This one could be Q or R. So I'm going to go ahead, I guess we could just write, we can pick whichever one we want to fill in. Let's say R. Triangle R has 3 angles that are smaller than a right angle and has blank sides of equal length. Well, how many of these sides are the same length? All 3, right? 1, 2, 3. This is our equilateral triangle. All of the sides are the same length. So I'm going to put 3. Triangle blank has 3 angles smaller than a right angle. So we said that was our other one. That's Q. And has blank sides of equal length. Well, what do you think? I would say 0. I don't think any of these are the same length. I think this one needs to be a little longer to make this one equal length. Maybe you're seeing something different. Again, I feel like staying at home this long has turned my brain to mush, so hopefully you're seeing the same thing I did. And then we only have one left. Triangle blank has 1 angle larger than a right angle. Well, right here is larger than a right angle, so I'm going to put triangle P and has blank sides of equal length. Well, how many of these are the same length? None, right? I'm going to put 0. Okay? All right. That was the end of this lesson, so hopefully you understood through all my babbling. I need to take a nap or something. I can understand the relationship between angles and triangles, so hopefully you can say that for this lesson. You don't have a Google form for this one. I want you to just look through your vocab book. If you didn't fill it out, you need to fill it out. So go back in the video and make sure you filled it out. And then I want you to find a member of your family, and I want you to teach them what a ray is, what an angle is, what a right angle, obtuse, and acute. So those 5 vocabulary words, go explain them to someone in your family. All right, have a good rest of your day.